The sound of a hand striking flesh echoed through the ornate dining room. My glasses flew from my face, landing with a delicate clatter against the polished hardwood floor. For a moment, the world froze. The crystal chandelier above cast prisms of light across shocked faces. My hand moved slowly to my cheek, feeling the heat rising where my daughter-in-law's palm had connected. "You stupid old woman," Vanessa hissed her perfect makeup, unable to mask the ugliness contorting her features. "Who do you think you are?" My son Marcus stood paralyzed behind her, his eyes wide but his body motionless, watching his mother being struck without intervening. That slap did more than knock my glasses off. It shattered every illusion I had carefully maintained about my family. In that crystalline moment of clarity, I knew what I had to do. My name is Eleanor Johnson. My friends call me Ella. I am 68 years old, and that slap was just the beginning of my story. Have you ever felt betrayal from the very people you trusted most in this world? I used to believe that family was the one constant in a changing world, that the love and sacrifice I poured into raising my son would be reciprocated when I grew older. Now, standing in the Cook County Courthouse, 6 months after that fateful slap, I face my son and his wife across the aisle as they attempt to declare me mentally incompetent and seize everything I own. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it truly began. For 43 years, I served as an elementary school principal in Southside Chicago. I dedicated my life to educating children from our Black community, teaching them to stand tall and proud in a world that too often tried to diminish them. My late husband James was the love of my life, and my rock for 45 beautiful years before a stroke took him 8 years ago. He was a civil engineer, a principled man who built bridges both literally across Chicago's rivers and figuratively within our community. Our modest 2-story wooden home on Oakwood Boulevard represents everything we worked for. Every board, every nail paid for with decades of honest work. It's not just a house, it's our legacy, the physical embodiment of 2 lives dedicated to service and sacrifice. After James passed, the house grew quiet. The spaces once filled with laughter and debate seemed to expand, becoming cavernous in their emptiness. But I found my rhythm again. I tended my rose garden that James had started for our 30th anniversary. I joined a book club for seniors at the Oak Park Community Center. I cooked Sunday dinners using recipes passed down through generations of Johnson women. Marcus would visit occasionally, though less frequently after he married Vanessa 6 years ago. My son had changed from the thoughtful, kind-hearted boy I raised. The man who now wore expensive suits and drove luxury cars seemed a stranger wearing my son's face. "Mom, you're living in the past," he would say, whenever I mentioned his childhood promises to take care of me. "Times are different now." Perhaps I should have seen the warning signs. The way Vanessa's eyes assessed the antique furniture James had lovingly restored. How she would casually mention senior living facilities during dinner conversation. The subtle suggestions that the neighborhood was becoming dangerous for someone your age. But love is blind, they say. And a mother's love is perhaps the blindest of all. 3 weeks ago, Marcus called unexpectedly. "Mom, we need to see you right away. There's important insurance paperwork you need to sign. It's urgent." His voice carried an unfamiliar tension. Something felt wrong, but I pushed the feeling aside. After all, this was my son. The next day, they arrived at my doorstep. Vanessa wore her camera-ready smile, the one she uses for her Instagram posts, where she portrays the perfect wife, the perfect homemaker, the perfect everything. Marcus stood slightly behind her, his eyes darting around, never quite meeting mine. "Oh, Mom, you're looking tired today," Vanessa cooed as she stepped inside her designer perfume, overwhelming the scent of the sweet potato pie I'd baked that morning. "We just need you to sign these simple insurance papers. Nothing to worry about." We sat in the living room where James and I had spent countless evenings. My fingers traced the arm of his favorite chair as Marcus spread documents across the coffee table. "Sign here, Mom," he said, pointing to a line at the bottom of the first page. "It's just updated insurance coverage." I glanced at the heading, Property Transfer and Liability Release Form. Not insurance at all. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs, but outwardly I remained calm. 40 years of handling school crises had taught me to keep my emotions in check when faced with deceit. "Are you sure this is insurance, Vanessa?" I asked gently. She smiled, though I caught the momentary flicker of unease in her eyes. Yes, Mom. You don't need to worry. I already asked a lawyer. I noticed the certifying attorney wasn't Richard Taylor, who had worked with James for 25 years, but a stranger. When I pointed this out, Marcus rushed to explain. Mom, please sign quickly. We need to submit this before Monday. It's just a formality. I sat quietly studying my son. His eyes were no longer those of the boy who once brought me wildflowers on Mother's Day. They held only impatience and worry that I would refuse. I said nothing. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling not from age, but from holding back tears and rage. I wrote slowly, deliberately altering the first letter of my name. Then I set the pen down and smiled. All done. I signed. Vanessa gathered. The paper glanced at it and beamed. Thank you, Mom. We'll send it to the lawyer right away. Marcus held my hand and said, You're wonderful. I promise you won't have to worry about a thing. I looked at that hand, the same hand that once held mine when he learned to write. Now it felt cold, rigid, unfamiliar. They stayed for tea, making small talk about neighbors and weather. Vanessa's eyes kept roaming around the room, mentally redecorating, I suspected. I pretended to sip my tea, watching them over the rim of my cup. Oh, Mom, Vanessa said as they prepared to leave. We're thinking of redecorating your house. Once the ownership is transferred, I'll help modernize it, okay? I gave a thin smile. Sure, do whatever you think is convenient. But inside, I knew they didn't just want my house. They wanted to erase me. On the drive home, a light rain fell over Chicago, the droplets catching the glow of streetlights. I drove slowly, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I pulled over near Washington Park and watched couples strolling under umbrellas. When an older woman like me is deceived by her children, people only say, "Poor lady." No one knows that behind the silence there's a storm brewing. I reached into my purse and pulled out a pale blue envelope. For 8 years it had remained sealed in my bedside drawer alongside James's handkerchief and the letters he sent while working on projects across Illinois. The envelope had yellowed slightly, but James's handwriting remained clear, slanted just like his speech had been deliberate and thoughtful. Open only if you are betrayed. I traced those words with my fingertip, but didn't open the envelope. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I made chamomile tea and opened an old notebook recording every detail from the afternoon. Vanessa's eyes, Marcus's voice, the lawyer's name, the time, and even the altered signature I'd intentionally made. I wrote it all down like a lesson plan preparing for the final lesson of my life. Before going to bed, I whispered to myself, if they want to play this game, I'll play it to the end. But this time, I'm writing the rules. I closed the notebook and looked up at James's photo on the wall. His smile was as gentle as ever, but his eyes seemed to remind me, you have never been alone. The next morning, I brewed coffee, put on James's old cardigan, and looked out at my garden. The morning dew on the roses reflected light like scattered diamonds. I took a deep breath and clenched the blue envelope in my hand. James, I whispered, it's time to open it. My hand trembled as I broke the seal that had remained intact for 8 years. Inside were 2 items, a neatly folded sheet of paper and a small silver USB drive. The paper was a handwritten will, notarized by Richard Taylor. The first line made my chest tighten. I, James Johnson, being of sound mind, hereby declare that all assets, including real estate company shares and retirement funds, belong solely to my wife, Eleanor Johnson, for the remainder of her life. No one, including my son, is permitted to transfer or interfere in any form while she is alive. At the end, James had added, if you're reading this, you've endured the pain I feared most. But don't be afraid, Ella. Truth always stands with the righteous. I pressed the paper to my chest. It felt like he was holding me again. The USB had a small label. When you need the truth, it will speak. I plugged it into my laptop. A single folder appeared, Johnson Evidence. 3 video files dated 06/04/2016, 09/11/2017, and 12/06/2019. The first video showed James sitting across from Richard in his office. If I'm gone, I want everything to go directly to Ella, James said firmly. You're worried about Marcus. Richard asked. "I love my son, but Vanessa is too ambitious. I'm afraid if we don't prepare, Ella will be the one who pays." The second file contained an audio recording of James recounting how Vanessa once suggested helping manage their assets, while Richard advised not to share account details with her. The last file showed James looking directly into the camera, his voice steady. "Ella, if you're watching this, it means I'm no longer with you. This USB contains evidence of your legal ownership. If anyone tries to take it away, go see Richard. Don't react too quickly. Let them show their true colors." I burst into tears, not from fear, but from being loved and protected even after he was gone. Night fell. Chicago rain mixed with the sound of wind through the trees outside my window. I opened my notebook and wrote clean, methodical lines like I was preparing a lesson plan: time, file names, instructions, next steps. I secured the will in my safe and hid the USB in a secret compartment of a picture frame James had carved years ago. Then I found my old contacts and called Richard Taylor. His voice was warm, gravelly, and genuine. "Ella, how long has it been? James must be smiling somewhere." I swallowed hard. "Richard, I need to see you about James's will." He paused for a few beats. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, the old office." I set the phone down. Silence settled on the window pane. The house seemed to exhale with me. I made more tea and opened another notebook, my planning book. I wrote in large letters at the top, "Do not react quickly." Underneath, I bullet-pointed my strategy meet: Richard confirm legality asset protection plan. Don't argue with Marcus or Vanessa, record audio. Take notes, collect evidence of coercion, pretend to cooperate. Let them think I'm weak and will keep signing. I practiced my performance. I don't remember. What was that paper from the other day Vanessa helped me with the signature? I'm afraid I'll sign it wrong. Marcus, I'm old now. I trust you too. Those sentences felt like velvet wrapping a blade. I stood before the mirror and looked into my own eyes. Still me, but with a new layer of resolve. I practiced smiling, slowly, dipping my head slightly so others would think I was fragile. Every gesture had intent not to perform for an audience, but to set a trap for those who underestimated me. I replayed James's video. I paused at the moment he said, "Don't react too quickly." I wrote that sentence on a small slip of paper and tucked it into my wallet. I also wrote, "Dignity is not for bargaining." Late that night, I stood on the porch watching the rain fall straight like silver threads. When he was alive, James used to call Chicago's rain the city's background music. I closed my eyes and felt my heartbeat blend with that melody. I wasn't afraid anymore. I just felt calm. Before sleep, I did what any good teacher would do. I compiled evidence. I printed screenshots of Vanessa's social media posts flaunting Johnson Estate. I noted the times, saved the links. I photographed the fake insurance contract circling property transfer and liability release. I marked the unfamiliar lawyer's name. I even noted Marcus's attitude that day, avoiding eye contact, urging me to sign, saying, "Just a formality." I placed everything into a folder labeled Evidence Copy 1. Copy 2 held the duplicated USB. Copy 3 was a backup of both a hidden folder on my hard drive, password protected, with James's and my wedding date. Morning arrived with soft golden light filtering through my curtains. I poured coffee into the old mug that reads, "World's Greatest Principle," a gift from my students upon my retirement. I touched those words and felt a slight ache. Greatest, yes, but not naive. I changed into a dark blue dress, put the will and the backup USB in my bag, and stuck a note on the refrigerator door. "Breathe deep. Don't react quickly. Let them talk." I tidied the kitchen, pulled the curtains closed, and locked the door. Outside, Chicago's sky was bright blue after a night of rain. I stepped down the porch stairs and took a long, steady breath. At 10 o'clock, I would go to James's old office, the place where our story began, and perhaps the place where I'd begin again. I got in the car and buckled my seatbelt. The world's greatest principal mug rested in the cup holder, trembling slightly as the engine started. I placed my hands on the wheel and smiled faintly. "James," I said to the rearview mirror, "I'll meet you in memory. As for me, I'm going to see Richard." The car rolled forward. The road ahead was dry, straight, and long. Inside the cabin, the radio murmured just enough to hear like a whisper, "Don't be afraid." I wasn't afraid anymore. I just wanted what was right. The next morning, Chicago lay under a thin veil of fog, soft as breath. I drove to the old law office, a brick building in the heart of downtown. It had been nearly 8 years since I set foot there, yet everything seemed unchanged. The polished brass nameplate, the little bell on the door that rang whenever someone entered. Richard looked older, his hair grayer, but his eyes remained bright and steady. When he saw me, he stood up and offered a faint, wistful smile. "Ella, you got here earlier than I expected." I smiled back, feeling the weight of years between visits. "Thank you for taking a last-minute meeting. I think James trusted you enough to know I'd need you someday." He gestured toward the leather chair opposite his desk. "Have a seat, Ella. We have a lot to talk about." Richard took a thick brown file from a drawer labeled Estate of James Johnson. He opened it and slid it toward me. "This is James's official will filed with the Illinois Department of Justice. I checked this morning. There has never been a request to cancel or replace it, which means—" He paused, looking me straight in the eyes. "You're the sole legal heir. No one, not even Marcus, has the right to touch the assets while you're alive." I sat still, feeling my heartbeat slow and heavy. A strange mixture of comfort and pain spread through my chest. James had prepared everything so carefully, yet I had let my kindness be exploited. Richard turned to the second page, his voice lower now. "And this is something James never told you." He pulled out 2 sets of documents stamped with international bank seals and slid them toward me. James opened 2 contingency accounts overseas, one in Canada, one in Switzerland. Both are under your name, and you're the sole beneficiary. These accounts were automatically activated after James's passing, but require my confirmation to ensure security. I froze. I had lived frugally, surviving on pension and James's company shares. I never imagined he had planned this far ahead. "Oh, James," I whispered, "even after death you were still protecting me." Richard smiled softly and nodded. "That's how he always was. He believed you'd need protection once Marcus and Vanessa showed their true colors." After a moment of silence, I told Richard everything: the so-called family meeting, the forged document, Marcus's avoiding eyes, and Vanessa's honeyed voice dripping with lies. I described every tiny detail, from the intentionally misshapen signature to the way she said, "Mom, it's just an insurance form." Richard listened intently occasionally, jotting notes in his small notebook. When I finished, he looked up, his gaze sharp. "They've broken the law, Ella. If we can prove you were coerced or deceived into signing, that's falsification of legal documents. And if there's intent to seize assets, the penalty is even harsher." I nodded, though my heart was torn. Marcus was still my son, after all. I didn't want to send him to prison, even knowing he had betrayed me. Richard read the look in my eyes. His voice softened. "Ella, I know you're still a mother, and that's what makes you noble. But James wouldn't want you to live humiliated. There's a way to expose them without direct confrontation." "I'm listening," I said quietly. Richard closed his notebook and spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "Pretend to cooperate. Pretend to trust them. Pretend to be weak. The more they think you're unsuspecting, the more careless they'll become. Meanwhile, I'll collect evidence, video footage, recordings, financial records. Once everything's solid, we'll take it to court." I was silent for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. "Feign weakness to defeat the strong. James used to tell me that." Richard nodded. "So you agree?" My answer was steady. "I do. If they think I'm just a senile old woman, I'll let them believe it until they dig their own graves." The meeting lasted over 2 hours. Together we drafted a plan. I would return to Marcus's house, act remorseful, and say, "I've thought it over." I'd let them talk freely while secretly recording with a device Richard provided. He would contact the banks to secure all assets in my name. Meanwhile, he would file for a property supervision order to prevent unauthorized transfers. Before I left, Richard placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Ella, you're not alone. We'll do this the right way, by the law, not by anger." My eyes stung. "James, I was lucky to have a friend like you, and I'm lucky you're still here to help me." He chuckled softly. I'm helping because I don't want James showing up in my dreams to yell at me for letting you get cheated." That made me laugh, a sound that was both painful and warm. As I stepped outside, sunlight filtered through dew-soaked trees. I stood on the steps, lifted my head to the blue sky, and took a deep breath. It felt like I had finally stepped out of the fog. Everything was becoming clear. I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I sat at my dining table and wrote a short card to Marcus. "I'm sorry for getting upset the other day. I've thought about it and maybe I was too rigid. If you and Vanessa need me to sign the papers again, I will, as long as everyone's happy." I sealed the card in an envelope and mailed it. A small move, but the opening act of my counterattack. 3 days later, Marcus called. His voice was unusually cheerful. "Mom, Vanessa was so touched by your change of heart. We'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend to talk things through. Are you free?" I feigned confusion. "Well, I think so, but I've been feeling tired lately and my memory is not what it used to be." "That's okay, Mom. We'll take care of everything." When I hung up, I smiled quietly. They believed me, and that belief would become the blade turning back on them. That evening, I opened the drawer and took out the small box Richard had given me. Inside was a fountain pen with a built-in micro recorder. "Just press the top of the pen lightly. It'll record everything for up to 3 hours," he'd said. I pressed it. A small light blinked. I could hear my heartbeat, slow, steady, but strong. Once I was just a gentle teacher and principal, a kind mother. Now I was learning from those who had hurt me, silent strategy and retaliation. I looked in the mirror. My face was lined with age, but in my eyes the tremor was gone. I smiled at my reflection. If they thought I was senile, let them. Because this time the senile old lady was rewriting the ending. I lit a small candle before James's photo and whispered, "Do you hear me, James? The game has begun, and this time I won't let anyone touch what's ours." The flame flickered, reflecting in my eyes, bright, deep metallic. Outside, the wind rustled through the tall oaks like whispered encouragement. I gripped the pen tightly, my weapon not of violence, but of quiet precision. 2 days before the reconciliation dinner, I woke early and made my usual cup of chamomile tea. Everything was eerily calm. No calls, no messages, no reminders from Marcus or Vanessa. I thought they were lying low to gauge my reaction, but no, they were busy showing off their victory. That morning, when I opened my laptop to check the news, YouTube's homepage showed a suggested video, "Our Dream Home Reveal, the Johnson Estate." Vanessa's radiant face filled the thumbnail, red lips, curled blonde hair, with Marcus beside her, his arm around her shoulder, and a forced smile. The caption below read, "Thanks to my wonderful in-laws for helping us make this dream come true." I clicked it. Upbeat music blared as Vanessa guided viewers past the iron gate, gesturing proudly. "Hi everyone! Welcome to the new Johnson family home, a luxurious, elegant space built with love and a little financial support from my amazing in-laws." Her tone was sweet enough to rot teeth. The camera panned to a shiny brass sign reading, "Johnson Estate," identical to the one once mounted outside my house in Southside Chicago. I sat upright, heart pounding, as I realized the house in the video was mine. The gray roof, the white window frames, the climbing roses along the balcony. Every inch unmistakably familiar. She called it the new family home. But to me it was James's legacy, the place where I'd buried my heart in every brick. Vanessa led the camera through the interior, gesturing like a tour guide. "This is the living room where I'll film my morning cooking vlogs. And here's the kitchen, my favorite space." She opened a cabinet and pulled out a set of crystal glasses. I recognized them instantly, the wedding set engraved E&J 1978. My hands clenched, nails biting into my palms. By the end, Vanessa turned to the camera, beaming like a spotlight. "Thank you all for your support. This house proves that if you work hard and have people who believe in you, you can achieve anything. #Johnson Estate, #blessed, #family goals." As the hashtag #Johnson Estate scrolled across the screen, my chest went cold, as if someone had poured ice water over me. I scrolled to the description box. In italics it read, "House purchased and registered under the name of Vanessa Johnson, with financial sponsorship from my wonderful mother-in-law, Mrs. Eleanor." My name sat there surrounded by thousands of likes and glowing comments. It turned out they had used my name to take out a $400,000 mortgage. I didn't scream or break anything. I simply opened my browser and downloaded that video. Then another house tour before renovation Q&A, how we got our dream home. Each one was living evidence. In another clip, Vanessa sat on my sofa flashing a bank statement. A lot of people asked how we got approved for the loan so fast. The secret is having a trustworthy financial guarantor, my mother-in-law. Love you, Mom. She formed a heart with her hands and laughed brightly. Marcus sat beside her, silent eyes cast down like a man hiding guilt. I paused. The video inhaled deeply, then pressed print. White sheets fed from the printer one by one, each labeled with the video title, upload date, views, comments, hashtags, and their smiling, lying faces. When the last page slid out, I stacked them neatly into a folder labeled Evidence Exploitation of Elder Assets. I picked up the phone and called Richard. He answered after 2 rings. Ella. Richard, I need to see you, or at least you need to see this. I sent the video link via email. Less than a minute later, his voice dropped tight with anger. Good Lord, she made this public. Not just public, Richard, I replied. She used my name to take on debt. He was silent for a few beats, then spoke slowly. Ella, this is textbook elder financial abuse. Very serious, but don't rush. The more she flaunts it, the more we have to use. Let her keep filming. Let her keep talking. I understood immediately. As I used to tell my students, the one who talks the most in class often reveals the most about themselves. Vanessa was talking, and soon every boast would become evidence. That afternoon, I reopened my old social media account. I hadn't posted since James died, but I still followed a few groups, including Vanessa's. She had just posted a new story, a sunset view of the glowing house captioned, "Thank you, Mom Eleanor, for making my dream come true." I tapped the heart icon, then calmly commented, "The new house is beautiful, Vanessa. You deserve happiness." Moments later, she sent a private message. "You saw it, Mom. I was worried you'd misunderstand. I just wanted to show appreciation." I typed slowly, "It's fine, dear. I'm just proud of you both." A heart emoji popped up. Vanessa believed me. I leaned back in my chair, sipping cold tea, a faint smile curling at my lips. Only one thought crossed my mind. Beautiful, like a trap closing shut. That night I organized my files. The first folder, will and USB original evidence. The second, videos and social media. I labeled each with timestamps and notes, upload dates, Vanessa's hashtags, her subtle mentions of parental support. I even saved all the comments, especially one that stood out. "Vanessa, I work at the bank. I remember your loan file. You got approved so fast because your mother-in-law's name was on it." An offhand comment, but more powerful than any confession. I printed the page and added it to the file. As I was about to close my laptop, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Mom, Vanessa posted the house video. Did you see it? Everyone loves it. Thanks again for helping us." I looked at the text, my hand trembling slightly, then replied, "It's nothing, son. I just want you both to be happy." I knew if I said anything different, he'd be suspicious. But right now, everything was unfolding perfectly. I set the phone down and opened the old wooden cabinet where James used to keep his blueprints. I brushed a thin layer of dust off the surface. "James," I whispered, "they're showing off their prize, but they don't know it's evidence." Moonlight spilled across the table, silver and sharp. I wrote in my journal, the lines even and steady. Vanessa posted house video, used my name to borrow $400,000, had Johnson Estate, downloaded and printed everything, sent to Richard. He said, "Don't rush, let her keep filming." I agree. I closed the notebook and set the recording pen beside it. Tomorrow I'd visit them with a smile, compliments, and the air of a proud but forgetful mother. In the silence, I felt a strange calm. I used to teach my students that those who know when to stay silent often hold the real power. Now I understood that truth more than ever. I closed my eyes, listening to the rustling wind outside. In it, I could almost hear James's voice. "Ella, let them build their stage. When the curtain falls, all you have to do is stand up." I smiled because I knew the play was reaching its climax, and this time I was the one writing the script. The morning of the reconciliation dinner arrived with a quiet heaviness. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of my navy dress, the one James had always complimented. My reflection stared back at me. Silver hair, neatly pinned back, subtle lipstick posture straight despite the years. I practiced my expressions carefully, the slightly confused smile, the gentle tilt of my head, the hesitant hands that would convince them I was exactly what they needed me to be, a forgetful old woman ripe for manipulation. My phone rang. It was Ruby Williams from next door, my neighbor of 30 years. "Ella, are you sure about this dinner tonight?" Her voice carried concern that made my heart warm. "I don't trust those two as far as I could throw them." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Sometimes, Ruby, you have to let people believe they're winning so they'll show their full hand." "Well, I'm right next door if you need me. Just call, and I'll be there faster than you can say amen." After we hung up, I slipped the recording pen into my purse and headed out. The drive to Marcus and Vanessa's downtown condo took me past familiar landmarks, the school where I'd served as principal, the park where I'd pushed Marcus on the swings, the church where James and I had renewed our vows on our 40th anniversary. Each place held memories of a life well lived, a life I wasn't about to surrender. When I arrived at their building, the doorman greeted me with practiced politeness. The elevator whisked me up to the 32nd floor, where the Chicago skyline sprawled beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Their door opened before I could knock. "Mom!" Vanessa beamed, wearing a cream silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "You look so nice. Come in, come in." She embraced me, her expensive perfume enveloping me like a cloud. I hugged her back, my hand gently pressing the top of the pen in my pocket to activate the recording. The apartment gleamed with minimalist luxury, all chrome and white leather, and abstract art that said nothing but cost everything. Marcus stood by the dining table arranging wine glasses. "Mom, you made it." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We were worried you might forget." I returned the smile, playing my part. I wrote it down on my calendar. I'm forgetting small things these days, but I'd never forget dinner with my only son. Guilt flickered across his face, gone so quickly, I might have imagined it. Dinner was an elaborate performance. Vanessa served gourmet food on designer plates, chattering about her social media followers and the renovations planned for their new estate. Marcus remained quieter, watching me carefully as I pretended to struggle slightly with cutting my steak. "Mom, you mentioned you were having trouble remembering things," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Have you considered seeing Dr. Palmer? He's an excellent geriatric specialist." I tilted my head. "Do you think I need to? I forget where I put my glasses sometimes, but doesn't everyone—" "It's more than that, Mom," Marcus interjected. "Last week you called me Mark twice. That's not your glasses." I had never made such a mistake, but I nodded solemnly. "Did I? Oh dear, perhaps you're right. We just want what's best for you." Vanessa reached across the table to pat my hand. Living alone in that big house, managing all those finances, it must be overwhelming. I took a small sip of water. "Sometimes I do feel lost with the bills since James passed. Your father handled all of that." They exchanged glances, a silent victory dance. "That's why we think our arrangement is perfect," Vanessa continued. "You sign the house over to us, we handle all the finances and maintenance, and you can just enjoy your retirement without worries." I nodded slowly. "It sounds reasonable when you put it like that." Marcus pulled out a folder. "We have the new papers here. The lawyer fixed the issues with the first draft." "New papers?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Remember the insurance forms from last week?" Vanessa said smoothly. "There were some errors. These are the corrected versions." The same property transfer documents lay before me, just with different dates. I pretended to read them carefully, squinting slightly. "This says I'm transferring ownership of my house to you two." "It's just legal language, Mom," Marcus explained too quickly. "It means we'll take care of everything. You'll still live there as long as you want." I looked up at them. "And all my accounts, too. That seems like a lot." "That's how these forms work," Vanessa said, her patience thinning beneath her smile. "It's all or nothing, but it's for your protection." I deliberately let my hand shake as I picked up the pen. "I'm not sure. Mom." Marcus's voice hardened slightly. "We discussed this. You agreed it was for the best." I looked at him, really looked at him, searching for the boy who once made me Mother's Day cards with handprints in paint. Where had that child gone? When had ambition and greed replaced the kindness I'd spent years nurturing? "You're right," I finally said. "I'm just being silly." I signed the documents again, subtly altering my signature in a way only a document examiner would notice evidence for later. Vanessa quickly took the papers, not even checking the signature in her eagerness. "Perfect. I'll have these filed tomorrow." As we moved to the living room for coffee, I carefully steered the conversation. "I saw your video about the house, Vanessa. It was lovely." Her eyes lit up. "You saw it. Wasn't it amazing? We already have 15,000 views. People love seeing transformation stories." "It certainly is a transformation," I agreed mildly. I hardly recognized my own home. "It's not really your style anymore, Mom," she said dismissively. "Too dated. We're bringing it into this century." "And the mortgage?" I asked innocently. "I noticed you mentioned my name in the video." A flash of panic crossed her face before she recovered. "Oh, that was just for the followers. They love family stories. The loan is completely in our names." "I see," I said, though I'd already obtained copies of the mortgage documents from Richard showing my name as guarantor. "Well, it all sounds wonderful." The evening continued with surface pleasantries, but something had shifted. My questions, innocent as they seemed, had made them uneasy. As I prepared to leave, Marcus pulled me aside in the hallway. "Mom, are you okay with all this? Really?" For a moment I saw uncertainty in his eyes, a crack in the facade. "Of course, son." I patted his cheek. "I just want you to be happy." His shoulders relaxed. "We are happy, and we'll make sure you're taken care of." "I know you will," I said, meaning it in ways he couldn't imagine. On the drive home, rain began to fall, steady, methodical drops that matched the rhythm of my thoughts. The recording pen had captured everything: their lies about the documents, Vanessa's admission about using my name, their plans for my home. More evidence for the growing file. When I reached my house, I was surprised to see Ruby waiting on my porch with an umbrella. "I saw your lights were still off and got worried," she explained, ushering me inside. "How did it go with those two vultures?" I smiled tiredly. "About as expected. They think they have me right where they want me." Ruby snorted. "Little do they know who they're dealing with. Eleanor Johnson didn't run Southside Elementary for 20 years by being a pushover." We settled in the kitchen, where Ruby made tea while I downloaded the recording. Her hands paused as she heard Vanessa's voice through the speaker. "It's just legal language, Mom. You'll still live there as long as you want." "That's a bald-faced lie," Ruby growled. "Once they own that house, you'll be in a nursing home faster than you can blink." "I know," I said quietly. "But now I have proof." Ruby squeezed my hand. "You know what happened to you happened to me too." I looked up in surprise. "What do you mean?" She sat heavily, her eyes distant. 3 years ago, my son David convinced me to put his name on my bank accounts for convenience. 6 months later, he'd emptied every last penny and moved to Florida. $40,000, my life savings. My heart ached for her. It ached for. "Ruby, I had no idea." I never told anyone. The shame was too much. She looked at me, her eyes suddenly fierce. "That's why you need to fight Ella. Not just for yourself, but for all of us they think they can discard." After Ruby left, I sat alone in my kitchen, listening to the rain against the windows. Her story had crystallized something in me. This wasn't just about my house or money. It was about dignity, about not letting age become an excuse for erasure. The next morning, I drove to the community center for my weekly art class. The building was an old converted warehouse where seniors gathered for activities: painting, book discussions, yoga for aging bodies. It had become my sanctuary after James died, a place where age was not a liability, but a badge of honor. I was setting up my easel when Gloria Banks entered. At 75, the retired judge moved with the authority of someone used to commanding courtrooms. Her silver hair was cropped short, her brown skin glowed with vitality, and she wore bold red lipstick like armor. "Eleanor." She greeted me with a warm hug. "Ruby told me what's happening. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," I assured her. "I can use all the support I can get." Gloria nodded, her expression serious. "Elder financial abuse is an epidemic, especially for Black women like us. The courts still don't take it seriously enough." "Can they really declare me incompetent?" I asked, the fear I'd been suppressing finally surfacing. "They can try," Gloria said, her voice steel beneath silk, "but not if we're prepared." After class, Gloria invited several women to join us for lunch, Ruby herself and 3 others I knew from various center activities. We gathered at a corner table in the cafeteria, 6 Black women with over 400 years of life experience between us. "Ladies," Gloria began, "we have a situation. One of our own is being targeted by family members attempting to seize her assets by declaring her mentally incompetent." Heads nodded in understanding. This wasn't an unfamiliar story to any woman at the table. "I propose we form what I'm calling the Council, a support group specifically focused on helping Eleanor fight this battle." Denise Thompson, a retired nurse, leaned forward. "What are we up against exactly?" I explained the situation, Marcus and Vanessa's deception, the property transfer documents, the false claims about my memory. "And I just received this yesterday." I pulled out an official-looking envelope from my purse. "A notice of a competency hearing scheduled for next week. They're moving faster than I expected." Gloria took the document, her brow furrowing as she read. "They've hired Jeffrey Palmer as their expert witness. He's notorious for rubber-stamping these cases for wealthy clients." "Can they really take everything based on one doctor's opinion?" asked Lucille Baker, a former librarian. "They can if we don't fight back," Gloria replied. "But Eleanor has something most elders in her situation don't have: advance warning and friends with resources." She outlined a plan. Ruby would provide witness testimony about my daily functioning. Denise would coordinate with medical professionals she knew to counter Palmer's assessment. Lucille would research similar cases for precedents. And Mabel Johnson, a retired accountant, would examine the financial documents for evidence of fraud. "What about me?" I asked. "What should I do?" Gloria fixed me with a steady gaze. "You, Eleanor, need to prepare for the performance of your life. They expect you to walk into that hearing confused and defeated. Instead, you'll be articulate, dignified, and thoroughly prepared." As our impromptu meeting concluded, each woman embraced me with whispered encouragements. For the first time since discovering Marcus and Vanessa's betrayal, I felt something beyond anger or sorrow. I felt the power of collective resistance. That afternoon, as I worked in my garden tending to James's roses, my phone buzzed with a message from Ruby. "Check Vanessa's Instagram now." I quickly washed the soil from my hands and found my tablet. Vanessa had posted a new video titled, "Caring for My Mother-in-Law with Memory Loss." My blood ran cold as I clicked play. The video showed me dozing on my couch during a recent visit, my head tilted awkwardly, glasses askew. Behind me, Vanessa spoke in a hushed, martyred tone. "She used to be a principal. Now she forgets to turn off the stove, but I still care for her like my own mother because my husband loves her so much." The camera panned to show Marcus nodding solemnly in the background. Then came footage of Vanessa helping me take medicine, holding a glass of water, while I looked disoriented. I remembered that day clearly. I'd had a migraine, and Richard had suggested a medication that made me drowsy. Vanessa had filmed me right after I'd taken it. The entire 6-minute video was neatly edited with captions floating over somber music. "Caring for the elderly is a journey full of challenges. Not everyone understands a daughter-in-law's struggles." I scrolled down to the comments, each one stabbing like a knife. "Poor daughter-in-law. She's a saint to put up with that old woman. She looks totally senile, probably abusive too. Crazy grandma vibes." I couldn't believe my eyes. All my life, I'd been a respected educator, never spoken too harshly, led with dignity and compassion. And now online, I was reduced to crazy grandma. My hands trembled as I called Gloria. "They're building their case publicly," she said after watching the video. "This isn't just about the house anymore. They're trying to destroy your reputation to justify what they're doing." What do? Document everything. Download the video before they delete it. We'll use their own tactics against them. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the blue glow of the screen washing over my face. I watched the video again, taking screenshots of every frame, every comment. Tears slid down my cheeks, but I didn't bother wiping them away. I had thought I was strong enough not to be hurt by betrayal, but seeing thousands of strangers laugh at me, I broke. My sobs blended with the ticking of the grandfather clock James had restored decades ago. I clutched a framed photo of us on our 40th anniversary. His kind eyes, my head resting against his shoulder, both of us gray, but glowing with the warmth of a life shared. "What would you do, James?" I whispered. "How do you fight your own child?" As if in answer, I remembered something James had told me during a school crisis years ago. Dignity is the only thing no one can take unless you stay silent and let them. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. I replayed the video, paused on each frame, and took precise screenshots. I printed them one by one, sliding each into plastic sleeves, and organized them in a thick binder labeled Evidence Number 2 Defamation and Elder Abuse. On the first page I wrote, Uploader Vanessa Johnson, timestamp 8:42 a.m., May 18th. Content video distorts my image and fabricates cognitive impairment. Consequence, thousands of views, hundreds of public comments containing defamation. I placed my hand over the stack of papers, feeling a chill run through me. If this is the game they want, I whispered, then I'll be the one to end it. The next morning brought an unexpected call. The courthouse clerk's crisp voice informed me that a petition had been filed to declare me mentally incompetent, with a hearing scheduled for the following Monday, just 4 days away. "The petitioners are Marcus and Vanessa Johnson," she explained. "You have the right to legal representation. If you cannot afford an attorney—" "I have an attorney," I interrupted, my voice steadier than I felt. "Richard Taylor will represent me." I called Richard immediately, the panic rising in my throat. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," he said after I explained. The video was strategic, establishing public perception before the legal proceedings. "Can they really do this? Declare me incompetent based on a doctored video?" "They can try," Richard assured me, "but we have something they don't expect: evidence of their manipulation. I need you to bring everything to my office today, every recording, every document." As I gathered my evidence files, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit holding a clipboard. When I opened the door, he handed me an envelope. "Eleanor Johnson. You've been served with a temporary restraining order prohibiting you from accessing your financial accounts pending the outcome of your competency hearing." I took the paper with numb fingers. They had frozen my assets, my checking account savings, even my pension deposits. I had no access to my own money. At Richard's office, I spread everything on his desk: the recordings, the videos, the property transfer documents, James's will, and now the restraining order. Richard examined each item carefully, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. "This is a coordinated attack," he concluded. "They're trying to isolate you financially, then emotionally. Classic elder abuse tactics." "What can we do?" "File an emergency petition to lift the financial restrictions. And we need to prepare you for Monday's hearing. Dr. Palmer will try to make you appear confused, disoriented. You need to be the opposite: poised, articulate, unflappable." As Richard outlined our strategy, his office phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to me, his expression troubled. "That was the bank. Someone attempted to withdraw $50,000 from your savings account this morning using your power of attorney." "I never gave anyone power of attorney," I said, alarmed. "Exactly." Richard's eyes narrowed. "They fabricated documents. This has escalated from unethical to criminal." That afternoon, Gloria organized a meeting at her home, a beautiful brownstone filled with African art and legal books. The council gathered in her living room, along with Richard and a woman I hadn't met before. "This is Dr. Vivian Carter," Gloria introduced us. "She's a geriatric psychiatrist who's agreed to perform an independent evaluation." Dr. Carter, a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, shook my hand. "Judge Banks tells me you're being railroaded, Mrs. Johnson." "Please call me Ella," I said. "And yes, it appears my son and daughter-in-law are attempting to seize my assets by declaring me incompetent." For the next 2 hours, Dr. Carter conducted a thorough evaluation: cognitive tests, memory assessments, judgment scenarios. I answered every question clearly and completely. When she finished, she looked at Richard. Mrs. Johnson shows no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Her memory, reasoning, and executive function are all well above average for her age group. Will you testify to that effect? Richard asked. Absolutely. Dr. Carter nodded firmly. And I'll also testify about the unethical nature of making such a diagnosis based on edited video footage. As the meeting concluded, Gloria pulled me aside. There's something else we need to discuss, she said quietly. Ruby has been watching your house when you're not there. Yesterday she saw Marcus and Vanessa enter with what looked like moving boxes. My heart sank. They're already packing up my belongings. It appears so. Gloria's expression hardened. We need to document this. I've arranged for a private investigator to monitor your property. If they remove anything, we'll have evidence of theft. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced my bedroom looking at the photographs on the walls James and me on our wedding day. Marcus's graduation family holidays spanning decades. Each image a testament to what I believed was an unbreakable bond. How had it come to this? How had the boy I nursed through chickenpox, taught to ride a bicycle, and comforted through his first heartbreak, become someone who would steal from his own mother? At dawn, I gave up on sleep and went to my rose garden. The early morning light cast long shadows across the dewy grass as I knelt in the soil deadheading spent blooms. Gardening had always centered me the tangible reminder that growth requires both nurturing and pruning. As I worked, a car pulled into my driveway. Marcus stepped out alone, looking tired in rumpled clothes. "Mom," he called, approaching cautiously. "Can we talk?" I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my knees. "Of course." We sat on the porch swing James had built, the chains creaking gently as we rocked. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I saw the court notice," Marcus finally said, "about the competency hearing." "Yes," I replied, simply waiting. He stared at his hands. "It's not what I wanted, Mom. Things got complicated." Complicated how Marcus explained to me how trying to take your mother's home and declaring her mentally incompetent became the solution to anything. He flinched at my directness. "Vanessa has expectations about lifestyle status. The mortgage on the condo is underwater, and her social media career isn't bringing in what she promised. When she saw how much equity was in this house..." "So this is about money," I said flatly. "It's not just that," he protested weakly. "We were worried about you living alone, your age, the neighborhood changing." "Marcus." I turned to face him fully. "I taught in this neighborhood for 40 years. I know every family on this block. This has been my home for 5 decades. If you were truly concerned, you would have offered to move in with me, not try to move me out." He had no answer for that. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I continued, my voice soft but steady. "Not the betrayal, not the lies. It's that you think so little of me, of my mind, my autonomy, my dignity, that you believed I wouldn't fight back." Tears welled in his eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. Yet here we are." I gestured to the garden, the house, the life James and I had built. "Monday morning we'll face each other in court. You and Vanessa trying to prove I'm incompetent. Me fighting for the right to control my own life." Marcus looked stricken. "Mom, we can stop this. I'll talk to Vanessa." "No," I interrupted. "We're well past that point. The hearing will proceed. The truth will come out. And whatever happens afterward, we'll both have to live with it." He left shortly after, shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched his car disappear down the street, my heart heavy, but my resolve stronger than ever. Later that afternoon, I met with Richard to finalize our strategy for Monday's hearing. His office was cool and quiet, a sanctuary from the emotional storm of the past weeks. "The good news is Dr. Carter's evaluation gives us solid medical evidence," he explained, "and Gloria's testimony as a former judge will carry significant weight." "And the bad news?" I asked. Richard sighed. "Palmer is well connected. He's testified in hundreds of these cases, and judges tend to defer to his expertise. Plus, the video Vanessa posted has created public perception we'll need to overcome." I nodded, absorbing this. "What about the financial documents, the fake power of attorney?" "That's our ace." Richard smiled for the first time that day. "The bank provided copies of the documents submitted. The signature is clearly forged, not even a good forgery, and we have your authentic signature on multiple official documents for comparison." He pulled out a legal pad. "Now let's prepare for their questions. Palmer will try to confuse you, make you appear disoriented. His favorite tactics are rapid-fire questions about dates and numbers." For the next 2 hours, Richard drilled me with the same questions Palmer was likely to ask. What year is it? Who is the current president? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens? I answered each one calmly and correctly, even when Richard deliberately tried to fluster me. "Good," he nodded approvingly. "Very good. But the most important thing is to stay calm. They want you to appear emotional, easily agitated. That plays into their narrative." "I spent 40 years managing classrooms and faculty meetings," I reminded him. "I know how to keep my composure when challenged." As our session concluded, Richard handed me a small device. "This is a panic button connected to my phone. Keep it with you at all times. If Marcus or Vanessa show up unannounced, if you feel threatened in any way, press it immediately." I slipped it into my pocket, the weight of it, a tangible reminder of how precarious my situation had become. That evening, Ruby and Gloria came over with dinner, Ruby's famous jambalaya and Gloria's peach cobbler. We ate at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped Marcus with homework, where James and I had planned our retirement, where I now planned my legal defense. "I saw Marcus earlier," I told them. "He came by alone." Gloria's eyes sharpened. "What did he want?" "I think he's having second thoughts, but he's in too deep to back out." Ruby snorted. "Too deep in Vanessa's clutches, you mean? That woman has had her claws in him from day one." "Maybe," I sighed. "But Marcus is a grown man. He made his choices." We finished dinner, and as Gloria gathered her purse to leave, she hesitated. "There's something you should know before Monday," she said. "I've been doing some digging into Vanessa's background. She's been involved in 2 previous lawsuits, both settled out of court, both involving elderly individuals who claimed she manipulated them financially." I stared at her. "You're saying she's done this before?" Gloria nodded grimly. "I believe your son's wife is what we call a professional predator, someone who deliberately targets vulnerable individuals, particularly the elderly." The knowledge settled in my stomach like a stone. This wasn't just about my house or Marcus's financial troubles. It was something more calculated, more sinister. After they left, I sat on my porch watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. The evening air carried the scent of my roses and distant summer rain. I thought about James, about Marcus as a child, about the life I'd built and was now fighting to preserve. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old blue envelope, the one that had contained James's will and the USB drive. I had kept it as a reminder. Turning it over in my hands, I noticed something I'd missed before: a small bulge in the paper, a slight thickness in one corner. Carefully, I tore along the seam and discovered a hidden compartment James had created in the envelope itself. Inside was a small folded note in his handwriting. "My dearest Ella, if you found this, then the worst has happened. Remember our trip to the safety deposit box in 2016. The key is in my old tackle box bottom compartment. Whatever happens, know that I prepared for everything. All my love, James." The safety deposit box. I had forgotten about it entirely in the chaos of James's death. We had visited the bank together, but he had never told me what he placed inside. Tomorrow I would find out. But tonight, holding this last message from my husband, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Monday's hearing wasn't just about keeping my home. It was about honoring everything James and I had built together, a legacy of integrity, dignity, and truth that no court ruling could ever diminish. I tucked the note into my journal and whispered to the night sky, "I'm ready, James. Whatever comes, I'm ready." Monday morning arrived wrapped in a soft golden light that seemed incongruous with the gravity of the day ahead. I woke before dawn, my body tense with anticipation. Today would determine not just my legal status, but the future trajectory of my relationship with my only child. I dressed with deliberate care, a tailored navy suit I'd worn to countless school board meetings, pearl earrings James had given me on our 30th anniversary, and sensible low heels that wouldn't betray my nerves. My hair was neatly styled makeup, subtle but polished. The mirror reflected a woman of dignity, not the confused, helpless figure Vanessa had portrayed in her videos. The safety deposit box key weighed heavy in my pocket. Yesterday afternoon I had found it exactly where James said it would be, in his old fishing tackle box, hidden beneath layers of lures and hooks. The bank had been closed by the time I located it, but I planned to visit immediately after today's hearing, regardless of the outcome. The doorbell rang precisely at 8. Gloria stood on my porch in her own courtroom attire, a burgundy suit with a silk scarf, her silver hair framing her face like a crown. "Ready?" she asked simply. I nodded, gathering my purse and the leather portfolio containing copies of all our evidence. "As ready as I'll ever be." Richard met us at the courthouse steps, a grand stone building downtown that had witnessed countless human dramas unfold within its walls. Today, it would witness mine. "Dr. Carter is already inside," he informed us, his voice low and efficient. "Ruby and the others will be here shortly. Remember, no matter what Palmer says or how Marcus and Vanessa behave, maintain your composure. We want the judge to see the stark contrast between their portrayal of you and reality." The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with wood-paneled walls and uncomfortable benches. I sat beside Richard at our table, Gloria directly behind us. Across the aisle I spotted Marcus and Vanessa, with their attorney, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit whose reputation for aggressive elder law cases preceded her. Vanessa wore a demure gray dress, her hair pulled back in a modest bun, the perfect picture of a concerned daughter-in-law rather than the glamorous social media personality she presented online. Marcus sat stiffly beside her, his eyes fixed on the table before him, refusing to look in my direction. The bailiff called the court to order as Judge Howard Peterson entered, a white man in his 60s with steel-rimmed glasses and a reputation for fairness in family court matters. "Case number 768542, in the matter of Eleanor Johnson's competency hearing," the clerk announced. Judge Peterson reviewed the documents before him. "I understand the petitioners Marcus and Vanessa Johnson are seeking to have Eleanor Johnson declared mentally incompetent and to establish guardianship over her person and estate. Is that correct?" Marcus and Vanessa's attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have substantial evidence indicating Mrs. Johnson is no longer capable of managing her affairs or making sound decisions regarding her health and finances. And Mrs. Johnson opposes this petition." The judge looked toward our table. Richard rose. "Vigorously, Your Honor. Mrs. Johnson is fully competent, and we have evidence that this petition is part of a calculated attempt to seize control of her assets through fraudulent means." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge frowned. "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Taylor. We'll examine all evidence presented. Let's begin with the petitioners." What followed was a carefully choreographed character assassination. Vanessa's attorney presented a timeline of my supposed decline, selective incidents taken out of context, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated. She showed clips from Vanessa's videos where careful editing portrayed me as confused and helpless. Jeffrey Palmer took the stand, presenting himself as a concerned professional who had evaluated me through extensive video evidence and interviews with family members. "In my professional opinion," he stated with practiced gravity, "Mrs. Johnson exhibits clear signs of moderate cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia. She demonstrates confusion about financial matters, forgetfulness about recent events, and occasional inappropriate emotional responses." Richard's cross-examination was surgical. "Dr. Palmer, did you conduct a formal in-person evaluation of Mrs. Johnson? That wasn't necessary given the abundant video evidence and a simple yes or no please." "No, but is it standard practice in your field to diagnose cognitive impairment without examining the patient in person?" Palmer shifted uncomfortably. "In certain circumstances, alternative methods. Does the American Psychiatric Association consider video footage selected and edited by interested parties to be sufficient for diagnosis?" "Well, no, but—" "No further questions, Your Honor." When Vanessa took the stand, she transformed into a portrait of martyred devotion. "I just want what's best for Mother Eleanor," she said, dabbing at non-existent tears with a tissue. Marcus and I have noticed her decline for months. She calls Marcus by his father's name. She leaves the stove on. Once she couldn't remember her own address when we were out shopping. Each lie built upon the last, creating a fictional version of me that bore no resemblance to reality. I maintained my composure, though inside I seethed at the calculated performance. Marcus testified next, his voice subdued. Mom has always been strong and independent. That's what makes this so difficult. But we can't ignore what's happening. It's not safe for her to live alone anymore. When asked about the property transfer documents, he claimed I had willingly signed them during a moment of clarity because I wanted to ensure the family home stayed in the family. Throughout their testimony, I sat straight-backed and alert, taking notes occasionally visibly tracking the proceedings with clear understanding, a living contradiction to their portrayal. When our turn came, Richard called Dr. Vivian Carter to the stand first. Her testimony was clear and authoritative. I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment of Mrs. Johnson yesterday using standardized testing protocols. She scored well above average in all categories for her age group. There is absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment, memory loss, or decision-making deficits. Next came Ruby, who testified about our daily interactions, our book discussions, my gardening expertise, my regular assistance, helping younger neighbors with tax forms. When Gloria took the stand, her judicial background lent particular weight to her words. "I've known Eleanor Johnson for 15 years, she stated. In all that time, I've never observed any decline in her mental acuity. In fact, she continues to be one of the sharpest minds in our community center book club, often recalling details from texts that others miss." As Gloria stepped down, the courtroom door opened quietly. To my astonishment, Mabel Johnson, the retired accountant from our council, entered, accompanied by a familiar face, Dr. Jeffrey Palmer's ex-wife, Judith. They took seats in the back row, Judith's gaze fixed intently on her former husband. "Your Honor," Richard said, "we'd like to call an unexpected witness, Dr. Judith Palmer." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Dr. Jeffrey Palmer's face went ashen as his ex-wife approached the stand. After being sworn in, Judith Palmer spoke clearly. "I am a clinical psychologist specializing in geriatric care. I've known Dr. Jeffrey Palmer for 20 years, 15 as his wife, 5 as his colleague, and now as someone deeply concerned about his professional conduct." "Can you elaborate on that concern?" Richard asked. "Dr. Palmer has been conducting these incompetency evaluations without proper examination for years. I've seen his files. He has a systematic arrangement with certain attorneys who represent family members seeking to control elderly relatives' assets. This isn't his first collaboration with the attorney representing Mrs. Johnson's son and daughter-in-law." This unexpected twist sent murmurs rippling through the courtroom. The judge called for order as Jeffrey Palmer's attorney leaped to object. Finally, it was my turn. As I took the stand and was sworn in, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For weeks I'd been spoken about, spoken for, and spoken over. Now, finally, I would speak for myself. "Mrs. Johnson," Richard began, "could you tell the court about your educational and professional background? I hold a master's degree in education administration from Northwestern University. I served as a teacher for 20 years and then as principal of Southside Elementary School for another 23 years before retiring. I managed a staff of 42 teachers and an annual budget of over $2 million. And since retiring, I've remained active in educational initiatives through volunteer work, served on the board of the community center, and managed my own finances and household independently since my husband's passing 8 years ago." Richard walked me through a series of questions about current events, financial matters, and my daily routines, all of which I answered with precision and clarity. Then he changed direction. "Mrs. Johnson, when did you first become aware that your son and daughter-in-law were attempting to gain control of your assets?" "Approximately 1 month ago, when they presented me with what they claimed were insurance documents, but were actually property transfer forms." "And what did you do?" "I signed the document with an intentionally incorrect signature to see how far they would take their deception. Then I began gathering evidence of their actions." Richard presented the court with our evidence, the altered signature, the recordings of Vanessa's admissions about the mortgage, the bank's confirmation that my name had been used as guarantor without my knowledge and documentation of the attempted unauthorized withdrawal using a forged power of attorney. Throughout my testimony, I never raised my voice or showed anger. I simply stated facts, maintained eye contact with the judge, and presented myself as exactly what I was: a fully competent woman defending her autonomy. When Vanessa's attorney cross-examined me, she attempted to confuse me with rapid-fire questions about dates and financial details. I answered each one correctly occasionally, adding contextual information that demonstrated not just recall, but deep understanding. "No further questions." She finally conceded frustration, evident in her clipped tone. As I returned to my seat, I caught Marcus's eye for the first time that day. What I saw surprised me, not anger or defiance, but shame. His gaze dropped quickly, unable to hold mine. After both sides presented closing arguments, Judge Peterson called for a brief recess to review the evidence. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as we waited for his return. Gloria squeezed my hand. "You were magnificent." "It's not over yet," I reminded her, though I felt cautiously hopeful. When Judge Peterson returned, his expression was grave. "I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, and I find several aspects of this case deeply troubling." He looked directly at Marcus and Vanessa. "The petition to declare Eleanor Johnson mentally incompetent is denied." Relief washed through me like a physical wave. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the evidence of attempted financial exploitation is substantial enough that I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation. All financial restrictions against Mrs. Johnson are immediately lifted, and the property transfer documents in question are declared null and void due to evidence of coercion and misrepresentation." He turned to me. "Mrs. Johnson, this court apologizes for the ordeal you've endured. Unfortunately, cases of elder exploitation are increasingly common, often perpetrated by those closest to the victim." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said simply. Then came the moment I hadn't anticipated. Judge Peterson turned his attention to Dr. Jeffrey Palmer. "Dr. Palmer, in light of the testimony presented today, I am ordering an investigation into your professional practices. I'm also ordering that all competency evaluations you've conducted in the past 3 years be reviewed by an independent panel of experts." Palmer slumped in his seat, the architect of many elder injustices, now facing justice himself. As the courtroom began to clear, Vanessa rushed past without looking at me, her face tight with fury. Marcus lingered, approaching our table hesitantly. "Mom, Not now, Marcus." I interrupted, my voice tired but not unkind. "There will be time to talk, but not today." He nodded and walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as local reporters who had gotten wind of the case approached. Gloria stepped forward, shielding me from their questions. "Mrs. Johnson has successfully defended her rights today against an unconscionable attempt at elder exploitation. She will be making no further comments at this time." Richard escorted me to his car. "I'll take you to the bank now as planned." The First National Bank of Chicago stood imposing against the midday sky, its marble columns a testament to permanence and security. A manager escorted us to the vault where my safety deposit box awaited. With steady hands, I inserted the key. The box slid out smoothly, revealing its contents: a sealed envelope, a small velvet pouch, and a USB drive different from the one James had left in the blue envelope. The envelope contained legal documents, ownership certificates for investments I hadn't known about established in my name alone. The velvet pouch held my mother's wedding ring and a pocket watch that had belonged to James's father. But it was the USB drive that captured my full attention. Back at Richard's office, we plugged it into his computer. A video file appeared dated just 2 weeks before James's stroke. I pressed play, and my husband's face filled the screen, slightly younger than in the other recordings, but with the same kind eyes and gentle smile. "Ella, my love," he began, "if you're watching this, then our son has made the choice I feared he might. I've watched Marcus change since meeting Vanessa. I've seen how money and status have become more important to him than the values we raised him with." James shifted in his chair, his expression pained. I tried to guide him back to remind him of who he really is, but some lessons can only be learned through consequence. "I've arranged for Richard to represent you if this day ever comes. The documents in the safety deposit box ensure that no matter what happens, you'll be financially secure." He leaned closer to the camera. "But Ella, when this is over, remember that Marcus is still our son. He's lost his way, but I believe I have to believe that the good man we raised is still in there somewhere. If he finds his way back to you, to the real values of our family, find it in your heart to forgive him, not for his sake, but for yours." Tears streamed down my face as James's final message concluded. "I love you, Ella Johnson. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. Whatever happens, hold your head high and remember dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered. And you, my love, have never surrendered anything in your life." The screen went dark. I sat in silence, absorbing his words, feeling his presence across the years. Richard gave me a moment before speaking. James was a good man. He saw this coming somehow. He always could read people better than I could, I admitted. I never wanted to believe Marcus could change so fundamentally. "What will you do now?" I considered the question carefully. "First, I need time to heal. Then, we'll see." 3 months passed. The district attorney's investigation moved forward methodically, focusing primarily on Vanessa's pattern of elder exploitation. To my surprise, they discovered connections between her and 2 other cases of financial abuse targeting elderly women in different states. This wasn't her first attempt, it was simply the first time she had failed. During this period, I kept my distance from both Marcus and Vanessa, focusing instead on rebuilding my sense of security. I changed the locks on my home, installed a security system, and with Richard's help, reorganized my financial affairs to protect them from future manipulation. The community center became my sanctuary. There, surrounded by my council of wise women, I found purpose beyond my personal pain. One evening, as we finished our weekly book discussion, Gloria approached with an idea. "Ella, have you considered that what happened to you could help others?" "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking. The reason you prevailed is because you had advance warning legal support and a community of women standing with you. Most elders facing exploitation have none of those things." She paused, eyes bright with purpose. "What if we created something, an organization, a foundation to provide those resources to others?" The idea took root instantly. That night I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. I pulled out my old teaching notebooks and began to outline what would eventually become the James Johnson Foundation. By morning, I had filled 20 pages with ideas, a legal support network, educational workshops about elder rights, a hotline for those facing exploitation advocacy at the policy level. I was sketching a logo, a stylized rose, James's favorite flower, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing alone holding a small potted plant. He looked different, thinner, his expensive suit replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. I hesitated before opening the door. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to see you." I studied him silently. "I've left Vanessa," he continued, words tumbling out. "Filed for divorce last week. I've been in therapy since the hearing. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could—" His voice broke. "Who could do what I did to you?" I didn't invite him in, but I didn't close the door either. "The DA's office contacted me," he said. "I'm cooperating fully with their investigation. I've told them everything, the fake documents, the plan to declare you incompetent, all of it." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Because you deserve the truth. And because I hope someday, not now, I know it's too soon, but someday, maybe you can forgive me." I looked at the man before me, searching for traces of the boy I raised. "Forgiveness is earned, Marcus. It's not granted on request." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I know. I'm prepared to spend the rest of my life earning it." He held out the small plant, a white orchid, delicate and hopeful. "This isn't a peace offering. It's just—" A beginning, if you'll allow it. I took the plant, but made no promises. Time will tell. As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Marcus?" He paused, looking back. "Your father left a message for you. He believed the good man we raised is still inside you. I hope he was right." His eyes filled with tears. He nodded once and walked away. That orchid became a symbol not of forgiveness granted, but of possibility. I placed it on my windowsill, where it would receive morning light, neither neglecting it nor giving it special attention. Like my relationship with my son, it would either thrive or fail based on consistent care and genuine effort. 6 months after the court hearing, the James Johnson Foundation officially launched with a mission to protect and empower older adults against exploitation. We started small, a donated office space at the community center, a volunteer staff consisting of the council and a few law students Richard recruited, and a modest website describing our services. Gloria, now our legal director, arranged for free consultations with attorneys specializing in elder law. Denise coordinated health assessments to provide documentation of cognitive capacity. Ruby organized a support group for elders rebuilding their lives after exploitation. Word spread quickly. Soon we were receiving calls not just from Chicago, but from across Illinois. Each story echoed elements of my own children pressuring parents to sign over assets, caregivers isolating elders from friends and community financial institutions failing to recognize warning signs of fraud. 4 months after our launch, we received an unexpected visitor, a representative from the State Attorney General's office interested in our work and seeking our input on proposed legislation to strengthen elder protection laws. What had begun as a personal response to betrayal was evolving into systemic change. 1 year after the court hearing, we held a formal gala to mark the Foundation's anniversary and raise funds for expansion. The ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton was transformed with soft lighting and arrangements of white roses on each table. More than 200 supporters gathered, community leaders, elder advocates, donors, and allies. As I prepared to deliver the keynote address, I scanned the crowd. The council members sat at the front table, each woman resplendent in her finest attire. Richard and his wife were nearby alongside Dr. Judith Palmer, whose courage in testifying against her ex-husband had led to his license suspension and an ongoing review of dozens of questionable competency rulings. And in the back, almost hidden in shadow, stood Marcus. I hadn't invited him, but I wasn't surprised to see him. Over the past year, he had demonstrated consistent effort, sending handwritten apology letters to everyone harmed by his actions, volunteering at the community center, never asking for recognition, and cooperating fully with authorities. Vanessa had fled to Florida to avoid prosecution, but Marcus had stayed to face consequences. As I approached the podium, the room quieted. Behind me, a large screen displayed our foundation logo and the words that had become our motto, "Dignity Unbroken." "Good evening," I began. 1 year ago, I stood in a courtroom fighting for something many of us take for granted, the right to be recognized as a competent adult, the right to control my own life and assets, the right to dignity. I shared my story openly, not as a victim seeking sympathy, but as a witness testifying to both the reality of elder exploitation and the possibility of resistance. "What happened to me is not unique," I continued. "Every day in America, older adults are manipulated, coerced, and defrauded by those they trust most. What is unique is that I had resources many elders lack advance warning through my late husband's foresight legal representation, through a trusted family friend, and perhaps most importantly, a community of extraordinary women who stood with me when I most needed support." I gestured to the council members, who rose to thunderous applause. The James Johnson Foundation exists to ensure that no elder faces exploitation alone. In our first year, we have provided legal assistance to 67 individuals, conducted workshops for over 500 seniors on recognizing and preventing fraud, and helped draft legislation that we hope will strengthen protections for vulnerable adults across our state. The audience's response was warm, but I wasn't finished. I had one more thing to say, perhaps the most important. Before I close, I want to address something personal. Many of you know that my own son was involved in the attempt to seize control of my assets. What you may not know is the journey we've both undertaken since then. The room grew very still. From the corner of my eye, I saw Marcus straighten his face, a study in apprehension. Exploitation damages not just the target but the perpetrator. It corrupts the heart, distorts values, and fractures relationships that should be sacred. The path to healing requires courage from all involved, courage to face uncomfortable truths, to accept responsibility, and to commit to change. I paused, meeting Marcus's gaze across the room. A year ago, my son made choices that hurt me deeply. Since then, he has faced consequences both legal and personal. He has demonstrated remorse not through words alone, but through consistent actions. Tonight, I want to acknowledge that journey. Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. Reconciliation is a process, not an event. It cannot be rushed or forced, but it begins with recognition of harm done and commitment to a different path forward. Tonight, I recognize that beginning. I didn't invite him to join me on stage or make any grand gesture of forgiveness. That would have been premature theatrical rather than authentic. Instead, I offered something true acknowledgement of effort and possibility. As the evening concluded, Marcus approached hesitantly. We hadn't spoken face-to-face in months, though his letters arrived regularly. "Thank you," he said simply. "I didn't expect that." "It wasn't for you," I replied honestly. "It was for me. Holding on to anger serves no one." He nodded, understanding the distinction. "The foundation is extraordinary, Mom. Dad would be proud." "Yes," I agreed. "I think he would be." "Would it be possible?" He hesitated. "Would it be possible for me to volunteer, not for recognition or to ease my conscience? I just want to help prevent others from making the choices I made." I considered his request carefully. The foundation needs someone to develop educational materials for family members, helping them understand how to support aging parents without controlling them. Your experience might be valuable there. It was a tentative olive branch, not full reconciliation, but a path toward it. Marcus recognized it for what it was and accepted it with appropriate humility. 2 years after the court hearing, the foundation had grown beyond what any of us had initially imagined. We now occupied a full floor of an office building in downtown Chicago, with a staff of 15 and satellite offices emerging in 3 other Illinois cities. Our work had been featured in national publications, and I had testified twice before state legislative committees, considering enhanced elder protection laws. On my 70th birthday, the council organized a surprise celebration at the community center. Friends, colleagues, and clients gathered to honor not just my personal milestone, but our collective achievement in changing the landscape of elder advocacy in Illinois. The highlight came when Governor Pritzker arrived unexpectedly to announce the passage of the Eleanor Johnson Elder Dignity Act, comprehensive legislation strengthening protections against financial exploitation and establishing a statewide elder justice task force. As I stood beside the governor for photographs, I caught sight of Marcus at the back of the room. Over the past year, his role at the foundation had expanded naturally as he demonstrated genuine commitment and valuable skills. He now led our family education program, helping adult children navigate the complexities of supporting aging parents while respecting their autonomy. Our relationship had evolved too, not returning to what it had been before, but growing into something new. We met monthly for lunch conversations, gradually expanding beyond foundation business to include more personal topics. He had begun dating again a social worker named Sarah, who specialized in trauma recovery and seemed to genuinely respect his journey of accountability. After the governor departed, Marcus approached with a small wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, his voice carrying the careful respect that had characterized our interactions since the reconciliation began. Inside the box was a framed photograph I had never seen James holding infant Marcus in the hospital, both bathed in soft light from a nearby window. James wasn't looking at the camera, but at his newborn son, his face a portrait of wonder and love. "I found it going through old albums," Marcus explained. "I thought you might want it." The image blurred as tears filled my eyes. Here was evidence of the beginning before mistakes, before betrayal, when love was simple and pure. "Thank you," I said simply. As guests began departing, Gloria found me by the punch bowl. 70 years, Ella," she smiled. "How does it feel?" "Nothing like I expected," I admitted. "When I was young, I thought 70 meant the end of meaningful life. How wrong I was." "The tragedy of our culture," Gloria said, "is how many gifts go unwrapped because we think gray hair means irrelevance." "Well, we're proving them wrong, aren't we?" "Every single day," she agreed. That evening I sat on my porch watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. My garden was in full summer bloom, the white orchid Marcus had brought me, now flourishing alongside James's roses. Inside the house no longer felt empty, but purposeful, filled with foundation documents, community center schedules, and plans for the future. I thought about the journey of the past 2 years, from betrayal to vindication, from anguish to purpose. I had lost some things, the uncomplicated trust in my son, the assumption of family loyalty, but gained others, deeper friendships, renewed purpose, and clearer understanding of my own strength. My phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. "CNN just confirmed your interview spot next week. The Eleanor Johnson Elder Dignity Act is going national." I smiled. From private pain to public policy, this was the wider purpose I had found. Later, as I prepared for bed, I paused before the photograph of James on my nightstand. His kind eyes seemed to hold the same certainty they always had, that I was enough, that I would find my way, that dignity was my birthright. "We did it, James," I whispered. "We turned darkness into light." In the quiet of my bedroom, I opened my journal and wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Below it, I added, "Today I turned 70. The governor named a law after me. My son gave me a photograph of his birth. My friends celebrated not just my life, but our collective vision. 2 years ago, when Marcus and Vanessa tried to declare me incompetent, they inadvertently set me on a path to greater purpose. What was meant to diminish me instead expanded my life in ways I never imagined. Next month, I'll testify before Congress about elder exploitation. The foundation is opening 2 new offices. The council has grown to include women from across the state. I think often about James's final message to me: dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered. I've come to understand that dignity is not merely personal resistance, but collective affirmation. It is the recognition that age deserves respect, that elders deserve protection, that later life deserves celebration. Marcus is finding his way back, not to what was, but to something new and perhaps more honest. Reconciliation is unfolding slowly, authentically, without glossing over hard truths. This morning, I found another white hair and smiled. Each one earned, each one a badge of survival, each one proof that I am still here, still growing, still becoming. Eleanor Johnson, age 70, not finished, just beginning. 5 years later, on my 75th birthday, I stood at the podium of a national conference on elder justice, surveying the audience of advocates, policymakers, and survivors from across the country. When I turned 70, I began, "I thought I had reached a pinnacle. Today at 75, I realize it was merely a plateau on a continuing ascent." And the James Johnson Foundation now had offices in 12 states. The Eleanor Johnson Elder Dignity Act had inspired similar legislation in 28 states and at the federal level. Our family education program, led by Marcus and now expanded into a comprehensive curriculum, had transformed how thousands of adult children approached care for aging parents. Marcus sat in the front row, Sarah beside him, with their 2-year-old daughter, little Ella, named for me. Our relationship had healed not through forgetting the past, but through honoring it, acknowledging the harm done while creating space for growth and redemption. The council members were there too. Gloria, Ruby, Denise, Lucille, and Mabel, now joined by dozens of other women who had formed similar circles in their own communities. What had begun as a support group for one woman facing betrayal had evolved into a movement of elders reclaiming their power. 5 years ago, I continued, I spoke about dignity as resistance. Today, I speak about dignity as transformation, the power of elders to reshape not just our personal narratives, but our collective future. We stand at a crossroads. America is aging. By 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older. How we treat our elders, whether we value their wisdom or dismiss their worth, whether we protect their autonomy or exploit their vulnerability, will define not just their quality of life, but the character of our society. The James Johnson Foundation envisions a world where age is honored, elders are protected, and later life is celebrated, not as decline, but as culmination. Where wisdom is recognized as a national resource. Where dignity is unbroken from first breath to last. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most were the faces hundreds of older adults with eyes bright with purpose, younger advocates listening with genuine respect, and my son, now a man his father would have recognized again. After the speech, as attendees mingled during the reception, I found a quiet moment with Marcus and little Ella. "You were magnificent, Mom," he said, the pride in his voice unforced and authentic. "Thank you," I replied, watching as little Ella twirled in her party dress, oblivious to the significance of the moment, yet benefiting from its ripples. "Do you remember that day in court?" Marcus asked quietly, "when I thought I was protecting you by taking away your rights?" "I remember. I was so wrong," he said, his voice humble, "about everything, about what it means to age, about what elders need, about how to honor a parent." I nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without needing to underscore it. "What you've built," he gestured to the room filled with advocates and allies. "Dad would be amazed." "No," I smiled, taking his hand. "He wouldn't. He always knew exactly what I was capable of. That's why he prepared the way he did, not to fight my battles, but to ensure I had the resources to fight them myself." Little Ella tugged at my skirt, lifting her arms to be picked up. As I held my granddaughter, I saw in her bright eyes the continuation of everything James and I had built, not just material assets, but values, purpose, legacy. "This is what matters," I told Marcus softly. "Not houses or bank accounts, but what we pass forward, the values that outlive us." That evening, back home in my garden, I sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. 75 years of life spread behind me, each with its lessons, each with its gifts. The path had not been easy or straight, but it had led to this moment of profound peace. My phone rang, Gloria calling to check in after the conference. "So," she chuckled, "what's next for the unstoppable Eleanor Johnson?" I laughed, watching a monarch butterfly drift among my roses. "More of the same, I suppose. More advocacy, more testimony, more building of the foundation." "No thoughts of slowing down," she teased, knowing the answer. "Slowing down is for people who peaked in youth," I replied. "I'm just hitting my stride." After we hung up, I remained in the garden until stars appeared, thinking about legacy and time. James had been gone 17 years now, yet his influence continued to ripple outward through the foundation that bore his name, through the son who had found his way back to the values we taught him, through the granddaughter who would grow up in a world more respectful of elders because of our work. I thought about the woman I had been at 50, 60, even 68, when that fateful slap changed the trajectory of my life. Each version of me necessary, each preparing for what would come next. Now at 75, I stood at the threshold of yet another chapter. Not an epilogue, but a continuing story of purpose and possibility. Not a diminishment, but an expansion. The breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine as I made my way inside. On my desk lay tomorrow's work speech drafts, legislative proposals, foundation strategic plans. Beside them, the photograph of James holding infant Marcus, and newer ones of Marcus with little Ella. Life moving forward generation to generation. Wounds healed not through forgetting, but through transformation. Dignity not just preserved, but amplified. I opened my journal and wrote, 75 today, still learning, still teaching, still becoming. The past informs but does not define me. The future beckons with purpose not yet fulfilled. Eleanor Johnson, age 75. Not finished, just beginning.